You know, Phil Mateer here, getting around and living in the Bay Area, where we are now and where we're going, probably off the cliff. Joining us to talk about it is Jim Wunderman, the CEO and president of the Bay Area Council. For those out there who don't know who the Bay Area Council is, give us a little update.
Well, the group's been around since 1945, formed by business, major employers, universities in the nine-county
Google,
region.
Kaiser.
Yeah, it's 300
UC,
members, and they're big.
We're talking the big boys and girls in the Bay Area.
And they come together to work on big policy issues like education, transportation, housing, workforce issues, healthcare, whatever the issues du jour are. And
that's right. And oftentimes your group teams up with other groups and becomes sort of the shadow government force that winds up with different things on the ballot and different things being proposed. Most recently, you were one of the big supporters that bankrolled the campaign for raising the tolls on the Bay Area state bridges in order for transportation.
Right.
So you are, when we say either special interests or big people, that's your group. And or
we think of it as being public interest. So, you know, we're not there to defend particular members and their concerns. We're there to think about the Bay Area and how to make it a better place, a more sustainable, logical place.
Now, you've recently had some studies done about and polling done on the Bay Area. And I found it interesting that in the Bay Area, what makes us so unique is that we seem to have too much of a good thing. Unlike other areas where the housing prices are going down, ours in recent years have skyrocketed. Other places that have suffered the Rust Belt unemployment, ours have quadrupled. We have a healthy immigrant population coming in with money and skills, and it is driving everybody up the wall at the same time. The anxiety level hasn't been higher.
Too much of a good thing, right? So, you know, we're very fortunate in the Bay Area to have the economy that everybody in the country and around the world wants, and no shortage of groups that come to us from every place and say, how do you do this? Because what we have, they want.
But at the same time, the people that are here are being forced out, or new young workers that are coming here find after a year or two they can't afford it, and they're moving. They're taking the skill sets they've picked up here and moving to other markets.
Well, you know, we didn't prepare the infrastructure. We said we should, but the 101 cities, 9 counties that don't come together very well, and we're not even the majority of the state. You know, we don't run the legislature. Have had a really difficult time getting especially housing. Housing is really the big issue here, as well as the transportation infrastructure. So we're making some progress on both, but it needs to be faster, more, better.
One thing I've heard from the Bay Area Council for the past 20 years is the need for like regional oversight or some sort of regional body or government to handle all of this and bring it all together. If that were to be created, what would you see it doing? If you were in charge of this Bay Area government, what would it do?
Well, for one thing, I think we could create a transportation system that makes sense. We have 28 agencies. They all have their own schedules, fare structures. They don't coordinate with each other, and people feel the impact. It puts a lot more people in their cars than would be if we had unanimity of purpose amongst the transportation agencies in the region. The second thing it would do is it would work with the cities to help plan and provide incentives and support the development of housing. We're so far behind. In the last 5 years, 6 years, we've created 625,000 jobs in the Bay Area, but only built 143,000 housing units. So, you know, you're supposed to build about 1.5 jobs per unit, and we've got 4.3 jobs per unit. So we're way out of whack. It's not a news story. This has been going on, and because we're falling so far behind, you see the effects of people being pushed out. It's unacceptable, hollowing out of the economy potentially. The frustration you're talking about, people don't see a future here, especially the millennials. In the poll that we had, 46% of the people in the Bay Area said they're actively thinking of leaving, more than half of the millennials. So that's completely unacceptable. It's a crisis. It can't be business as usual, and whether it's the creation of a regional government agency, which isn't easy to do, or a unanimity of purpose and creating maybe from the state level or somehow some opportunities for cities to see building housing as a positive thing rather than a negative.
Oh, that's a positive ending, but I'm not going to leave you on that, though.
Why?
Can you stick around? I'd like to do another segment on this, since you painted such a rosy picture of gloom and doom. I'm the gloom and doom guy.
No, look, it's challenging, and we have to address the challenges. So Jim, but let's not forget what a great place we live in.
Jim Wunderman, Bay Area Council, he's going to come back. We're going to do a second segment. Look. Well, good morning. As we saw in the news this weekend, one of the biggest stories is once again homeless in homeless camps, this time in San Jose. Joining us this morning is Jim Wunderman. He is the president and CEO of the Bay Area Council. It's a group of businesses, you're talking Facebook, Google, institutions like UC, Kaiser, all together. They are the big forces behind the scenes in a lot of what happens in the Bay Area government. Jim, the video we see of these camps, whether it's San Jose or it's Oakland or it's Berkeley, the tents going up in this area when we have the highest income on one side of the street and this on the other. It just doesn't make sense to people.
Yeah, look, it's unacceptable, Phil, and it's not new. We've been dealing with this for now over 35 years. This problem emerged in the 1980s. We haven't grappled with it properly. I was just in New York for a few days. Remember the stories of New York's problems. When you walk down the streets in New York, when you see a homeless person, you notice it because it's so rare. So they have a large shelter. They have way more homeless people than we do, but they shelter them. Most of our homeless people in the Bay Area, whether it's Santa Clara, Alameda County, San Francisco, are unsheltered. So you see
But also, we allow that. You see, New York doesn't. Well, New York, the city government there and the cops, they're the most progressive and liberal there is, but they do not allow that.
So New York State passed a law called the right to shelter, and it comes with an implication that if people have the right to shelter, you have the right to do something about them being on the street if you provide the housing.
But
so
some of this
New
has
York
to do
went about providing the housing.
New York has the will to do that.
Well, they have a unified city government, and they had resources we didn't have. They had housing in the boroughs that was unoccupied and had gone to a place where it needed to be refurbished. We don't have that kind of housing stock. So we have problems in the region of being able to house people. But the reason that this started in the first place is largely to do with the same problem. We haven't built housing, and people end up without a place to live. They end up on the street and in the kind of life that's unacceptable, especially in a region with such an economy like this. This is a solvable problem, but it's going to take a tremendous amount of will on the part of the region, the individual cities and counties to grapple with this.
But you know, we hear when the problem comes up, we hear from the homeless advocates, quote unquote. We hear from politicians. We hear from nonprofits. We don't hear, we're hear from Benioff and Salesforce about how it is a problem, but I've yet to see anything articulated out of the business community about how to handle the problem.
Well, you know, my chair is Bernard Tyson from Kaiser Permanente, CEO of Kaiser. He and his company have been working closely with Mayor Libby Schaaf in Oakland. If you remember, not long ago, you had this huge encampment under, for example, the 27th Street off-ramp on the 980. It's not there anymore. They created these tough shed communities nearby and people have moved from the encampments, which are now gone, into those communities. Now, it's not a perfect end-all solution. It doesn't provide the supportive housing and the other elements that we need, but there are ways to handle this, and I think they've made some progress.
What effect does this have on the economy of the Bay Area? It's booming now, but I'm hearing it from the tourist industry and already
look, it's not acceptable, and people are complaining about it. They've always been complaining about it, but it's gotten worse. You know, whether it's Sam Liccardo or Mayor Schaaf or London Breed, the incoming mayor of San Francisco, you know, we all have to come together and solve this problem with business leaders like the ones you named and others to finally get to this. I think we can solve this in the Bay Area, and I suspect in the next few years that we will, because it's untenable what's happening. It's socially, morally unconscionable and economically undesirable. So we
really
have to
quickly,
solve this
what
problem.
are the economic impacts of something like this?
Well, it hurts tourism, for example. People come to the city. Sometimes conventions come, and they say, we love San Francisco, but we're not coming back. They plan their conventions 5 years out. So while we've invested a lot in convention facilities, done a great job on that, if people are getting panhandled when they come out of the hotel, they don't feel safe, and it's just a generally bad-feeling environment for them, then they find another city to go to for their next convention 5 years out. So it has an effect over time.
Okay, thank you for joining us this morning. Like I said, I wanted to play off the news because, once again, we're seeing the same things again.
Yeah.
Jim Wunderman, who in addition to being the president and CEO of the Bay Area Council, also was the former chief of staff and with Dianne Feinstein, weren't you? And you worked with Dianne Feinstein and with Frank Jordan. So he knows of which he speaks. Jim, thank you for joining us this morning.